in our new series on retreat fails. And this is in alignment with the series I'm doing over on my podcast, which is all about transforming out loud and really getting just even more transparent, even more truthful about what it is to be a retreat leader. Laura, I'll share this with you. I kind of got the hit for this series. Well, first of all, I mentioned this to you. I've kept getting the Sacred Fool card in my Oracle deck, which is all about, being willing to be laughed at, being willing to make a fool of yourself because, what you're doing is important enough and it's worth it. And so that was part of the inspiration for this. But the other piece is, I've been working with retreat leaders for almost 5 years now. Really, coming from having done business coaching and having my clients continue to say, I really just want a business like yours, and going, oh, well, I can show you how to do that. Right. Mm-hmm. And our business evolves like that organically. And one of the things I've noticed, I've filled my retreats for years with Facebook ads and, had systems flowing and things working and all of that. But one of my biggest frustrations or things that made me feel the most sad was so many people who are called to host retreats, but they aren't really aware of what that means. And so the moment something goes wrong, they think, oh, I'm not meant to do this, and they throw it out. Mm-hmm. So my goal is to actually tell someone who's afraid to fail, like, just stop now. Just stop now, right? Don't even get started. Don't spend the money. Don't put yourself out there. Don't risk, because this is a journey it's really a journey that is the most awesome, exciting, inspiring thing that you can do with your time, in my opinion. But it's also, has inherent growth built in. Retreat and Grow Rich, the podcast. I'm Darla Ledoux, best-selling author, coach, and retreat leader, and I'm on a mission to normalize transformation on the planet, one intimate retreat at a time. This show's dedicated to the coaches, consultants, healers, leaders, and light workers who are here to hold space for the truth that transforms lives and get paid for it. Expert retreat and business tips, strategies, stories, and magic. It's your weekly mini retreat delivered right to your ears. Let's do this. So Laura, first of all, I thought of you immediately for this series. And that is a compliment, by the way.
Okay, she failed. All right, let's go.
This is a total compliment. Because, when we first started talking about your retreats, one of the things that you were up to was you had booked a retreat in Maui. Yep. And kind of had this big vision for hosting retreats. But there were pieces of it that were divinely inspired, and there were pieces of it that were maybe coming from the ego. And this is really the difference, right? When we quote fail at something, it's not a big problem. It's just interesting information about where our ego took over. So
I love how you said that.
Actually, before you do, talk a little bit about you and what you're passionate about.
Yeah.
Your work is so awesome.
Who am I? Yeah. So hi guys, I'm Laura Wieck. I created a program called the Body Mind Coaching Program, and it teaches holistic entrepreneurs, practitioners, how to incorporate coaching into their practice, so they can leverage their off-table time, make more money, serve their clients even more. And one of the things that when I stepped into doing this program is, my life has changed through in-person retreats and experiences. And so when I was putting this together, I knew that there needed to be that live interactive experience. I always like to say the online part of my course is the information. It's the retreat that is the embodiment. And, I'm teaching a process that is all about embodiment. So I actually have to walk that talk and give them a space to do that, because information is one thing, but feeling it and breathing it and being in it is another. So I knew I wanted to have this retreat component, and I was so fortunate enough to know Darla. But I think what happened was before you and I connected, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. I was always under the impression that the retreat had to be big and luxurious, big being like the location and tropical. And, I know that you have hosted some of those retreats. And I guess I put myself into this place of, well, and the other thing is that I actually wanted to charge for this. So I put myself into this place of, if I'm going to charge that much, I have to do big, expensive Maui. I had it in my head that my value was in the location, not in me and what I was bringing to the table.
Yeah. So I'm going to start by, you said I actually wanted to charge that much. So let's start with that, right?
Oh my goodness. Because that was the whole funny part of that. Yeah. Is there a specific question, or do you just want me to roll?
Yeah. What was charging that much? What did that mean to you? And what were you assuming people wanted in exchange for that money?
Oh, oy vey. Well, looking at that much. So, well, it started that I was like, anything above 5,000 would be amazing. So, yeah, so I was about at $5,000. But what happened was when I actually, and I'm happy to share the story of how this all went down. And thank God I negotiated my contract. But I went and made the deposit for the event space, and looking at my numbers and what they were charging and how many people I would have had to fill it, I ended up having to raise my program price to over $10,000 so that I would even make a profit.
Yeah.
And so what happened was I was trying. So I
want people to really hear this, because I can't tell you. So I call it destination transformation. If you're going to be all inclusive, you're including their room, you're including their food, you're including all the experiences. Maybe you probably had guests that you wanted to bring in and various things. You are looking at $10,000 or more.
Yeah.
If you want to make a profit on that.
Yeah.
So I want that to sink in. So you kind of went forward with it, and then you got to the space where you realized, whoa, that's a lot.
So what happened was, because I had this belief that the value was in where it was, not in what I was teaching or bringing to the table. And so what happened was, all of a sudden I get all my expenses, all these things together. In my head, I was ready to receive more. And I was like, oh, something around $5,000, something like that would be great. And then I put all this together and I'm like, holy crap, I have to charge $10,000. Now, keep in mind, this was the first round that I had ever offered it live. I had done this work for myself in my own practice. So, here I am trying to sell a program I've never actually done and it's all of a sudden it's over $10,000.
Yeah.
I was really torn because I didn't feel like I was good enough. I was trying to make the location be good enough. And then it was too much. I couldn't sell it because I was struggling with my own inner dialogue of, who the hell are you to be charging this much money? And I was cycling and freaking out, and it put me into a panic mode. I don't think you should ever sell when you're in panic.
Yeah.
Because I was like, my dog just walked in, so she's a little excited.
She agrees.
She agrees. She heard the panic and wants to rescue me. And it just got so big, so fast. So it was in that moment of, and I think when you talk about the ego, so one, I had negotiated my contract. Typically the deposit was non-refundable, and it was a $9,000 deposit, right? So I didn't even have any income coming in, and I put $9,000 on my credit card. And thank goodness I had negotiated a 30-day refund option for the deposit. So I was able to get my money back.
So what happened in those 30 days? So here you are, you're feeling like I really need, people want to
Yeah.
go to Maui, of course. So
Right.
this is going to be easy because people want to go to Maui. But
Right.
then there's all of this internal dialogue of like, but what am I bringing? And
Well, and what happened in that, and so, I teach this idea of embody your work and share it. Like, to me, my marketing is embody and share. Well, what do you think I was embodying those 30 days? I was embodying all scarcity, all lack, all panic, all fear. And so what was happening is that the marketing wasn't this expression of love and gratitude. The marketing was like, am I allowed to say bad words?
yeah.
Holy fuck, if I can't do this, like, I'm gonna fall. And then I had to get there, like, and I, this is just selling it. After that, there was the whole planning and delivering and getting supplies there. And I was just like, it was just too big for my britches. But it all started with this belief that if, in order for me to be enough, I have to go do a retreat in Maui.
Yeah.
That, like, my content, what I'm selling, what I'm offering, the transformation that I know I can help people in, the only way it's going to be worthy is if it's in a place in Maui.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because and there are people that believe in that, like, oh, the location will, if you happen to pick a location that's on your star client's bucket list, right? Like, oh, I've always wanted to go to Maui, or I've always wanted to go to Bali, or, oh, like, I really want to work with Laura and it happens to be in Maui and I've always wanted to go there. Like, great. But that might be one person.
Yeah. And now, I've been doing this now for a couple of years. I'm like, hell yeah, I can do a retreat in Maui. Like, the confidence, like, I'm a different person. And for me, like, the alignment, it's not so scary. It's not so big. But it was like, I had this vision to do retreats and I had this belief that in order for it to be valuable, it had to be somewhere swanky.
Yeah.
You know, and that, like, tripped me up. So, and it almost cost me $9,000.
Yes. Yes. So everybody listening, I think I've definitely put 9,000 down on like a big event. Mm-hmm. And once I did a VRBO, that was pretty pricey, but I was passing that on to clients who were already registered.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I've never paid that big of a deposit. So first of all, if you're listening, that's a red flag. Okay. 500, 1,000, like we can roll with that. But luckily you had negotiated. So Laura, talk about, where did you end up doing your first retreat?
No, that's fun because I know you know the answer. I'm from Ohio and I did it 10 minutes down the road. I'm in Columbus, Ohio. And what was really cool is when all this fell apart, I kind of got clear of the space that I envisioned, what I wanted. And I found this amazing event space that is just down the road from me. And they provide all the supplies, they get all the meals set up. Like, they are fantastic. I freaking love them. And
how many times have you hosted there now?
Oh gosh. I've probably done, between like mastermind and retreats, I think I'm probably at like 10. Although, and then there's a lot of VIP days and stuff that have come in the middle of that as well. So I go there a lot. And what cracked me up is, so then I was back at that like $5,000, like $5,000 to $6,000 price point, filled the program. I think I ended up having it was like 18 to 20 people who came in. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So 18 to 20 people at 5,000 when you're keeping most of that.
Yes. Oh yes.
Big difference.
And the other thing was that Columbus it's an easy city to travel to. The airport's not that huge, and we're really close to, they can get around really easy. I mean, you're an Ohio girl too, so you know that. And what cracked me up is that people loved Columbus. They loved it. They loved, because we're right downtown in the Arena District. Like, they loved it.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? Like, I live here. Like, you love Columbus? You're crazy. But yeah, I mean, my costs were a lot lower. It was super easy for me to deliver. And like, the stress was totally gone. And I mean, it's been amazing.
That's awesome. And last time I checked in with you, you were at like 785,000 earned through
from retreats. I know I went over, I I went over 1 million combined with all of my retreat stuff recently.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I would love to hear just a little bit. I recently interviewed you for my podcast. I got so much great feedback. People loved connecting with you and listening to your story and feeling your energy, which is the work that you do on retreat with people. Just talk a little bit about how you came to do this work and what called you to lead retreats.
I attended a retreat in Alaska and shared as a speaker and participant, and I just witnessed like what happened for me there without it being intentionally a transformational retreat. So I just knew that that was something I wanted to offer, because I felt like with online programs and even just, in-person workshops, that where the true change happens is like in that, extended amount of time. So I just knew that I wanted to be a facilitator of that kind of change and transformation, not only in my own life, but for the lives of others. And
you said it wasn't even, designed to be a transformational retreat. Say more about that. What have you, how do you know, or what was it designed for?
I felt like it was designed more for community, and it was mainly a yoga retreat. So
okay.
Crafts and hiking, a lot of the same elements, but it wasn't for the purpose of like your life will change from this experience. It was more like, hey, let's come together, let's create a community. And it was still an amazing experience, but I don't know that everyone left with something profound. And I think I did, because I went as a first-time facilitator. So it changed how I viewed life, and actually caused me to go into yoga teacher training. So I think I was just primed for that experience based on what was being offered for me to step into my own self differently.
Yeah, amazing. So, there was something about you that you're called to transformation. You're a transformational leader, and that spoke to you at a level that was maybe different than the other people there.
Yeah, I think so.
So I have talked about this particular interview as being about the numbers.
Yes.
So one of the biggest things that I hear over and over again is, what if people don't come to my retreat? What if people don't register? And then there's always this place, and I mean, it happens for everyone, where you're starting to look at the numbers and go, are enough people coming to this for me to make money, for it to make sense, for them to get what they came for? And there's always kind of this little niggle in the back of the head, like, am I going to look bad? Am I going to look like I failed if this retreat isn't full? So that's the conversation I want to have today with you. And I've had my own experiences of this as well. And so talk a little bit about, when you decided to do your first retreat. And for people who have, some people are familiar with you from the podcast, but you now host retreats in your home, but this is before any of that was available. So you're called to, build this space for people to come to, but you're kind of trying to decide, like, how do I know if they want it? How do I know if this will work? Talk a little bit about that space and that time in your life.
Well, it was during that time that I found you online. And Dwayne and I had already purchased our property with this intention. But in working with you, my place wasn't ready. And so it was one of those things of, I remember you saying, throw the hat over the fence. And so I went ahead and, without our place being ready, rented a space near our community to host a retreat. It's like, what, I feel the pull. I'm really ready to do this. Let's just do this. And just thought it would give me more information on how to design our space, like what, so that it wasn't just theoretical, like I could actually have the experience of doing that. Yeah. So I put a down payment on this beautiful home and started sharing it and inviting people to come. And I think what I realized in doing that is, when I think I maybe miscalculated like my list and the people that had expressed interest. A lot of them like, well, I want to wait till your space is open. So I didn't anticipate that.
People actually said that?
They did. Yeah.
Yeah. So you picked something that was kind of similar or could create a similar vibe to what you would be doing in your house to like test out the market, test out your system, like kind of be ready for when your space opens. Like I can bring people. And also to just not keep dreaming about it, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think for me too, it was also to get comfortable charging higher prices than what I was used to. Because when I was first doing this, before I was working with you, I was planning on doing like 4-day retreats for $300, you know, and Dwayne had to sit me down and say, yeah, we're not doing it for that. And so it was a lot of, it was a space for me to practice a lot in the invitation, charging more. But then there was the actually hosting the retreat itself.
Do you remember what you charged for that first one? I'm not remembering.
Yeah, it was $1,000.
Okay, great. So you were planning to charge $300. And what was the thinking behind that? Because I think a lot of other people probably have that thought.
Oh, yeah. Scarcity, complete scarcity. One, thinking that people couldn't charge, me having judgment over retreats that were a lot more that I felt like were not approachable or inclusive. You know, I was coming from a lot of the scarcity. I see a lot of healers coming from like, I want to serve people. And so I need to make it so that it's accessible to everybody. And there was a lot of that. And then I have to also say that I noticed that by me not charging very much, it also meant that I didn't have to show up as much. Like it was a way of me hiding to just say, oh, well, if it was only $300, they didn't get anything from it, you know, like whatever. But if I charge more, then I feel like I have to show up differently. And I think it can go to the other extreme of like, oh, now I need to prove myself and now I need to add more and all that if I'm charging more. So I'm witnessing the difference on both sides of that. But there's definitely some hiding. But definitely, you know, wanting to serve, absolutely wanting to serve. And
what did you have to move through to continue to raise your prices? And because you said accessible, inclusive, and a lot of times when that comes up, and you know, as you know, I work with people through all these stages. There's something about leaving people behind that that's tender, right? Like whether it's not having been left out yourself or, you know, some place where we don't ever want anyone to experience something negative as a result of what we are choosing to do. Do you remember what you had to kind of let go of to grow through that?
You know, there was quite a few things, and I feel like I'm still moving through some of those now, but I think part of it was one, kind of taking me out of the equation on some level, like it's not about me, that it really is about their transformation, seeing the value of just, you know, like even comparing it to a hotel stay, you know, like if they were staying in a hotel, getting just a place to stay, not the vegan gourmet food, not the support, not the container. It just helped me, like, I guess I just layered value upon value upon value to see that even what I'm charging now feels like a really good deal. So I think that was a big part of it. And then just as I've kind of explored this too, is that, you know, the true abundance, like if people are ready for this, they'll find a way. And it's, I think the other part that you helped with was taking my emotions out of the numbers too, and what is the lifestyle, or what is it that Dwayne and I are creating, and what does that look like just mathematically? And that was really helpful.
Yeah. One of the things people don't account for is if you're the leader and you're bringing your energy, right? When people sign up and pay money, they're entering into this energetic container. And if you're the leader of that, you need to feel good You need to be cared for. You need to, be able to nurture yourself. And if you're broke, that's challenging.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So our brain can get involved and have all kinds of stories about it, but it's math.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. And I love that you said, I took myself out of it. And if you take yourself out of the equation, like, what does that do? Like, what I'm hearing is you're focusing on more the transformation and the people who are coming and their commitment. And what did you learn about that?
Well, I think it helps for me just like take the ego out of it and really see that it really is about, even though I'm part of it, it's really about them and what they're willing to invest in themselves with and what they're willing to say yes to. It's been an interesting journey because I think there's a blend. Like it is also about me, but it's not. And so I'm still kind of playing with articulating that from my own experience.
Yeah, sometimes taking yourself out of it can just stop the head chatter, right? Because we have a whole lifetime with ourselves and stories about all the things we know about ourselves that maybe are irrelevant for this space of transformation.
Yeah, and I say that, so here's where the paradox exists, because with the first retreat, what I got was seeing what I was capable of. And so it was about me too. Yeah. And so it's not an either or, it's this and kind of thing. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So talk about that. So you're leading up to your retreat. And you had all these people who said, oh my gosh, you're going to build this space. I want to come. It's going to be amazing. And you said, great, I'm having a retreat. Here's the information. Here's the investment. And then they said, oh, I'm going to wait. So you kind of had this estimate of how many people you thought would come from your list. And then that wasn't happening.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. So what was that like?
Well, it was disheartening. And I think the part that was even more stressful is I remember having like 4 or 5 people actually say yes. And then they, towards the closest, or as it got closer, they actually like canceled for whatever reason. So then I had 2 people that were confirmed and coming. And that was up to a couple of weeks before. And I had already put down money onto this property that I was renting on top of all the money we were putting on renovating our place. And so it's pretty stressful, and I felt a lot of pressure. And I felt a lot of sadness too. I just saw how my skill set wasn't great in the invitation part. Like there's just a lot of self-growth happening. And yeah.
I know it was a while back, but do you remember some of that growth that happened when, in looking at like, oh, here's what I see I missed? Because this happens, by the way, it happens for everybody at some point in your retreat leading career, someone's going to cancel. And sometimes it's the perfect thing because spirit is guiding this container. And it's like that person wouldn't have been a fit for this conversation or whatever. Right. And other times it's like, we just didn't get clear. Like we didn't get them really bought into why they were coming, or we didn't take the deposit or whatever it was. Yeah. What did you learn in that process? Do you remember?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing was the thread that we uncovered together was that there's this almost not quite energy that I was carrying. So I had 2 people, and if I had 1 more, I would have broke even, and so it was just that tipping point that I just had a hard time moving through. So that became really apparent to me. And then I think the other thing in hindsight is trusting, so it got to this place where now I need to force it. Now I need to work harder. And now I need to find more people. And it was just, that part was exhausting to me. And it actually is the least fun. Give me any time of day and I would love it. But it was that kind of promoting that was not fun. So I learned early on that that's not how I want to do it. And it made me also really grateful that I am doing it in my home, because now I don't have to deal with rental agreements or down payments myself. It's kind of like, okay, I have the space and let's do this. So it was
the almost not quite. How did that translate into other areas?
Well, I saw more of how it translated in my past, like from high school being, the vice president versus the president, or on the prom queen court, but not the queen. I mean, like just random stuff, but it just not how it played out almost in every single thing, and how I'm willing to like do the effort, but there's this glass ceiling, and I can still notice it sometimes, but I'm at least aware of it, so it doesn't hold me as strong.
Yeah. So this, and if I'm remembering right, and everybody has something, and even if you're doing your 10th retreat, but you're doing something that's a little bit riskier, or a little different content or different message or more people or a higher investment or whatever, something's going to come up to heal in the process.
Yes.
And so that idea, if I'm remembering right, Marlo, I feel like it had to do with like really not shining, right? Like, let me not be that best person who's just out there.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that was definitely a huge part of it.
Yeah. And let's not charge too much and have people think, well, who does she think she is? And right. All of those things come up to heal in this process.
Yeah. And I have to say, like, that's what I probably love why I feel like the transformational retreats are so important, because it's causing me to like step up and to transform with every single retreat that I do in a way that I wouldn't have imagined. Like, not like I plan like, oh, this is the transformation I'm going to have, just like with the people who come. Like, I don't know exactly what's going to show up for them. And I think that's why this work is so important for the retreat leaders, just as much as the participants who come. We're all participants.
Totally. I teach this in our programs that it's like we open this container, right? The soul of the retreat. And then we get the lesson in our life so we can become the leader to lead that transformation for others.
Right.
And when people think like it's, it's not about me, or I don't have to take part in it, it's a huge wake up call. But when I'm transforming too, right? Spirit maybe is totally orchestrated all of these people to come to this for you, for your healing, for your growth and your leadership, because you need to be used at the next level.
Right. Yeah. And I see it being a win-win, like, again, it's not about me, but it is about me. It's about, like, it's just this really, paradox that happens.
Totally. And sometimes it's not about me, and letting it be about you, but not be about you. That is the breakthrough, right? There's an art to that.
Mm-hmm.
There's an art to knowing how much influence you have, and also that, you're irrelevant at the same time, because the transformation, the container's been opened.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Absolutely.
So you had your 2 people and you're thinking, oh gosh, what are some of the thoughts? Like, people think like, oh, this is embarrassing. They're going to think that I suck, or I'm not qualified because there's not more people. Obviously you were one short of breaking even. Like, so.
Yeah. There's also like, are they going to get what they need from this? Because I know one was coming for a community, so they really wanted, to have a sisterhood and more people there. And so there was some shame and guilt that I wasn't being able to offer what their original intention was and saying yes to coming. There was just the concern of like, oh gosh, 2 people, will my activities work? Will my, my plan, will that support them? And let me see what else was showing up. I know so what's funny about this is that this is also at a timing where my last retreat that was 2 weekends ago, I also had 2 people. And so I was able to notice the shift there, because some of these old things came up. I'm like, oh my gosh, my November retreat, I had 8, and then my February one, I had 6, and now I have 2. Oh my gosh, I'm a failure, and this is getting worse. And like all these things that were showing up for me. And again, community was a big one for these ladies who are coming. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's only 2 people and they're going to think I suck at this, or they're not going to get what they need. And yeah, it was just interesting to see all of that show up and like, wow, maybe I'm just kidding myself. I can do this work because people aren't signing up. And
and so what ended up happening with the 2 people?
Which time?
Either time, really.
Both of them, it was fascinating. I'm sure this is probably true for every retreat, but it was perfect. I can't actually imagine, based on what the women had coming to the retreat, having more people in there. Like, I don't think they would have had the time to be able to express as deeply and as fully as what they really needed to express.
Yeah.
And so it was just really powerful to witness and see. And just this one, I was able to trust quite a bit more actually than the first one, the divine intervention, like the timing of the right people at the right time, and just trusting that every retreat is going to hold its own energy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome, Renee. It's so great to be here with you. For everyone watching, Renee Lee is a brilliant retreat leader. She is an amazing coach, both practical business coach and spiritual alignment coach. And having grown up with a spiritual grandmother who really imparted lots of wisdom into your young mind, and then going on to really learn business and learn how to generate 6 figures in multiple businesses, and taking and combining those things, Renee, I think gives you such a unique perspective in the market.
And once I got the hit for where my first retreat was to be, and this was it was to be in Mount Shasta, I had to make a choice, because I've been following your emails, watching some of your videos on your Facebook page right here. And I had to make a choice. Do I want guidance, right, to put together my first retreat, or do I want to try to do this on my own? Now, I had done events like Reiki classes in the back of crystal shops, right? I also have an events background from the nonprofit sector. For over a decade, I worked and I supported events. So I was at this crossroads, and I also know the value of having a coach. I knew the value of having a mentor. And still, I had that conversation in my head. Do I need to hire a coach right now? Do I need to jump into this program, or can I do it on my own? And I decided to do it on my own this first go round. And of course, I approached it the same way that I approached all my other events, all my other Reiki workshops. It was very this energy of grassrootsy energy, I want to say, right? I rented out a gallery in Mount Shasta. I decided I wanted to teach them a bunch of stuff, plus have an excursion in there, because it was Mount Shasta, if we're going to be on that land. So I wanted to put that in there. And in addition to that, I wanted to give everybody a one-on-one, because this is one of my bonuses. If they had signed up by a certain time, they would get a one-on-one, like 30-minute one-on-one coaching.
Okay.
It was a ton of stuff, right? It was way too much. And I think I did it.
But great strategy that you brought in of giving them a reason to sign up now versus later.
Yeah. Yeah. So I thought it was smart.
Maybe not more work for you, right? Don't make it be something that's more work for you at the retreat.
Right. It was a lot. It ended up being a lot to fit into. I think it was just the 2 days. I had tapped into you on your Facebook page, and I had asked some questions after I watched some of your videos, just to kind of get some, idea on how to structure the 2 days for my first retreat. And you were generous enough to offer me some guidance. And I think one of the tips you gave me was, make sure you sell something at the very end, right? Make sure you sell something. And that was the plan going in. So I had all this content, and at the end, I was going to sell them something. I didn't really put much thought into it. I was not very clear what I was going to offer them at the end. I was going to wing it. So I go to Mount Shasta. I had 5 women show up, and it ended up being really exhausting because I couldn't fit everything. I couldn't fit those bonus private 30-minute sessions with everyone. So I ended up cutting back on my lunchtime to fit some people in. And one of the ladies that came was a former client. So I asked her to meet me really early in the morning to get her session in. So I woke up early. It was an 8 o'clock meeting with her because I had promised them, right? I promised them these bonuses and I needed to make it fit, but the content, it was just so much content plus the excursion. And so it was not easy breezy as I hoped it would be.
And then with all that content, did you end up making your offer?
No, because I wasn't clear what I wanted. I was thinking a VIP day. I was already planning a launch after the retreat. So I wasn't sure if I should offer them the VIP day at the retreat since I had this whole launch planned later. And what's funny is one of the participants during our 30-minute one-on-one session, she actually asked me, so Renee, what's next? Right. And she had worked with me 3 months prior. And so, and I said to her, I don't know, like, I think there might be a VIP day. But it's interesting, like the need was there, or the desire was there to continue. And I didn't show up and offer them the next step, like some of them were hoping for.
Yes. I love that because, and I teach this in various places, but the way transformation works, we get that new possibility and we get an experience of it at retreat. And if there's enough space for that, right, it really does depend on how it's designed. But then we know we're going back home and our environment back home was set up by the old version of us. Mm-hmm. So we do kind of have this knowing or this sense that I'm going to need some support when I leave here. So you already had people asking that, which is really cool because, everything about how I teach marketing is like, and sales, people are going to be asking for it because they're really clear about what the need is. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Love it. So, okay. So you did it on your own. You had 5 people, you had a lot of content. And this is, the Retreat Fails series. So we really want to talk about like what didn't work about all that content.
I didn't have time to take care of me. Like I didn't have any downtime really to even get ready for the next segment.
Or have lunch, it sounds like.
And I gave him breakfast too. So John, my husband, came with me to Mount Shasta and I put him in charge of breakfast. And we it was very like, we pulled it all together from this organic grocery store and it worked. It was fine. Everybody had a great time, but it was just it felt like too many pieces to juggle. And I would have loved giving myself, even if it was like simply giving them an extra half hour for their lunch break, right? Mm-hmm. To make sure that I had space and time to refuel, feel refreshed and come back, 100% to the next segment.
Yes. And we know that when we make choices that maybe don't serve us, right? Because it sounds like that didn't serve you. You didn't probably even have time for lunch. Because you're doing the sessions and all of that. And so when we do that and, it happens. And then in retrospect, we see, oh, I get it. Like, here's the lesson or here's where I was coming from. Where do you think you were coming from that you felt like you had to put all of this content in?
Yeah, I mean, it was connected to the price, right? So it was $797 is what I started off with for the Mount Shasta retreat. And I just felt like if they traveled so far, and people were driving down from the Vancouver area and from Colorado and Ohio. So if they were traveling far to see me for this retreat, I just felt like I needed to give them a ton of value. Yeah. And for me, a ton of value at that time was a bullet list of things that we're going to walk away with, the things that we're going to learn. Yeah. So it was all this content, right? But in the end, I realized some of them really wanted more time to reflect on some of the meditation and the exercises that we went through. So when they made that request, I would give them that extra 5 minutes to journal, that extra 10 minutes or whatever they needed. But that pushed my agenda back, right?
Yeah. So let's go back to, so $797 was the price. And do you remember how you decided on that?
I think I just pulled it out of thin air. I think it felt good. At the time, I barely broke even with this retreat because I didn't sell anything at the end of it. And I brought my husband over. And so I barely broke even. I'm just happy I broke even at that point.
Yeah. Like, thank God I didn't lose money.
Mm-hmm.
So $797 kind of came out of nowhere versus really having a strategy or a reason for it, which, isn't always bad, right? Like, you remember the price dice?
Yes.
So you can like roll the dice and pick what your pricing is. You can trust spirit to give you a number. Like but you want to then check it with your expenses and what your profit is and know exactly what's true. So, do I need to make a back end offer? What's the big picture here? What am I building?
Yeah.
That said, for your first one, breaking even and getting the experience, like, priceless, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I believe in really just completing what I call that dreaded first, just so you can have that experience and shift your energy and start climbing that energetic ladder to higher levels of mastery.
That's awesome. The dreaded first. So, so $797 is the price. And then there's this feeling of, I have to give a lot because they're paying $797. So that felt like a lot, like you should give them a lot.
Yes. And again, more because they were flying over. It wasn't so much that $797 felt high to me, but because they were traveling so far and taking X number of days. And most of them were moms. So it was that, I guess, a layer of guilt, I guess, is kind of mixed in there. Yeah, it wasn't so much proving myself, because I can see how that could be in the mix. That wasn't so much true for me. I think it was more of this layer of guilt, like I should, to make it an even exchange of energy.
Yeah. So coming in with guilt, how does that work?
You lose your lunch.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all the energy is so important, right? Like we teach this and we get this when we talk about soul alignment. The energy is so important, and so this energy of guilt and this energy of needing to give more, it just didn't give them space. It was almost like smothering, right? Like with too much content, with too much like, oh, let me take care of you, let me give you, what you need, let me give you an extra, 30 minutes of one-on-one. From the participants' perspective, it could come off that way, and it's a disservice, because then they don't have that time and space to really, let their mind wander so that the healing insights can get dripped in, right?
Yes.
So it's a bit of a disservice to them as well, for sure.
Yes. So I want to come back to that energy exchange in a bit, because that's so insightful, that idea of smothering. And there's this interesting dynamic. I have a funny story to share. But I want to kind of fast forward to what has shifted for you. So you went in, fire hose content. I had 182 PowerPoint slides at my first retreat. So totally get it. And then we did some work together in your retreat. We worked on what was strategic for you, right? At my retreat, which is, by the way, I'm doing this series to promote my retreat, which is at retreatandgrowrich.com/retreat. So if you guys want to come and build your strategy with me, go check that out. So what changed?
So I decided to jump into one of your retreats. So I came to Boston. This was a couple of months after my Mount Shasta retreat, which was summer solstice. So October 2016, I came to Boston to meet you. And that's when you offered a better structure for me to lay out my content. And you talked about how we really do want to give them that space, because that space is also for spirit to kind of come in and do its magic, right?
Yes.
And so I pared down my content. I was more confident in the silence, if you will, right? So if this is your content and your agenda, in order for spirit to kind of show up, in order for the participants to really have the time and space that they need to process certain memories that come up, you know, being confident in that space of silence, I'll call it, right? So that these beautiful magical moments can arise. Being okay with that, like you really taught me to be okay and be still in that, and not making silence or, you know, not making it mean anything about me. It's really holding space.
Yeah, so that's a big difference from feeling like guilt that they're spending this time and, you know, energy coming to see you.
Yeah.
To, like, it's not even about me.
Right. That it's all going to be, you know, even more divinely perfect if we simply relax into the space that we hold for them.
Yes, beautiful. You know, so I teach the framework of the castle, right? And we have the rooms in our castle, which are the core things that we bring or teach or hold space for. It doesn't even have to be teaching. So some people are more teacherly and some people are, you know, more coachy or space holder people, right? But there's the core things that are kind of the steps your clients go to get from where they are to where they want to be. There's some kind of system or process. Doesn't have to be structured. You know, you had talked about winging it. Like sometimes some of us are designed to wing it. But you kind of mapped out the rooms in your castle. And my sense is that in the Mount Shasta retreat, it was kind of like, well, let me give you everything that I know that I do that works. And then you moved into being more strategic and focusing that initial retreat, that initial experience with you on one of your rooms. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it was great clarity, right? Like you really forced me to get clear about my own process. I think so many beginner entrepreneurs, like there's so much wisdom that they have, these beginner healers, beginner coaches, and they have so many certifications, so many modalities, so many exercises. There's so much in their toolbox, right?
Yes.
But they don't take a step back or take the time to reflect on what that larger process is. And I think that level of clarity is huge. It's valuable. And that's what you offered to me at that Boston retreat years ago, was that time and that coaching to sink down and really see what that process is that creates results for your clients. I think I went with the castle approach. I don't, for the next retreat. But what I loved about your coaching was that you helped me not only to see my whole process, but taught me to segue into that high-end offer at the end. And I'm the type of person that always has trouble with segues. And so that was really valuable. And just kind of going, you know, your coaching on maybe what story would be great to go with that particular offering so that it's kind of seamless in the mind of the participant, right? So it's like, okay, great. I got a ton of value for these 2 days. This is the value. This is what I walk away with. These are the natural next steps I can anticipate. And then this offering that Renee's giving me is perfect solution for the support that I might need next. So it's seamless in their mind. So, you know, yeah. So, and as a result, go ahead.
No, you go.
No, well, as a result, like I have 5-figure clients for the last 3 retreats that I've held, open to the public from these, from the structure that you taught me.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And you didn't necessarily drastically increase the price to come to your retreat.
No, I think Philadelphia was $12.97, and then I went up to $18.97 for Montana. And I've just kind of played around with that price point because I brought it back down to $12.97, and now the next one in May is $9.97. But for me at this point, because I've created 5-figure clients at every single one of my retreats since I started working with you, there's a whole new level of confidence. Right. And so I understand that I don't need to make money from the retreat sales itself, but from the back end when I make the offer. So it's been amazing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Because the difference between $997 and $1,297, okay, $300. Say you have 10 people, it's 3,000, which is great. You know, we don't want to ignore that, but yeah, if you're making 20,000 per person on the back end, it you know, it really is irrelevant to a certain degree.
If you convert well, then you just want to get more people in the room.
Exactly. All right. Welcome, Helen MacMillan. You are first of all, just amazing human being. You know, you've worked with my wife as well for your videos. And, you know, we always talk about like the people in the industry who walk their talk, who live what they teach, and who are just really talented at holding space for transformation. And that's how we see you. Wow. So it's such an honor to be able to bring you to everybody today. So you kind of came up with a healing business in Jamaica.
Yes.
Moved over here. You know, you've got like years and years of experience with physical healing. And then you said, oh, maybe I could help other people do what I've done. And you work with business owners today. And, you know, what I love is you really combine all of these talents, which in my assessment is what people need these days. So talk just a little bit about your journey to becoming a retreat leader.
Oh, yeah. So my journey as a retreat leader began when I had my business, as you alluded to, back in Jamaica. It was called Healing Hands. And I always tell people I came to the mind through the body, right? Because I'd work on someone and like take them from like totally tensed up and painful to like, relaxed and open and free. And then they'd be back in a week, right back where they were. And so I've always been interested in healing, right? Getting to the root cause and really releasing something. And so I was in that always looking for the answer, to understand and to really help. Led me, I always say my spirit leads me to whatever I need, and led me to the work of Louise Hay. And I think that was one of the first retreats I ever went on, really, was attending the training to become the retreat leader, to be able to facilitate the Heal Your Life retreats. And it was so profoundly life altering for me. Well, reading her book had already altered my thinking so much that my life was altered. So that's why I was like, hey, I want to go learn how to help other people do this, right? And facilitate this. But that training and took me to a whole nother level. And then I started doing that. And a lot of the retreats also came because at one point in my life, I was a single mother. In between my marriages, I had 2 young children, and I had a business that I was running and, you know, giving a lot of myself to. And I really just needed an escape. Retreats were a way to step out of your life. And I found that it was so much easier to, in Jamaica, we say, catch up yourself. Catch up yourself, catch up to yourself, right? Take stock. And it was profound. So I started just facilitating those weekend retreats for my clients. And
I love that you had a phrase for it, catch up with yourself. You know, we don't, in our culture, it's like, we don't give that credence really. Well,
unfortunately, we don't give it enough. You know, we need to do it more.
Like something has to be drastically wrong for most people to take time to catch up themselves.
Exactly. Like we have to get to that place where we're exhausted to take a break, or we have to be in pain to go for a massage, you know? So yeah, it was really from my own experience, and then seeing, you know, how much can happen when we just give ourselves that spaciousness, that time to get present. So yeah, I do it. I had stopped for a couple of years. I did have a point in time where a coach I was working with had advised me. She's like, you know, because I would do it in Jamaica once a year, and even as my coaching business grew, and she was like, well, you know, one of my fails that I'll talk about later. I was doing a retreat in Cayman just because I wanted to, right? And it didn't work out. I didn't, for lots of many different reasons, and so I canceled it. But the person who I hired immediately after that, she was like, it's not highly profitable, so don't focus on that. So I stopped doing them for a couple of years, and at a point where I was so miserable, my husband was the one who said to me, "Why don't you do that? Start doing those again, because they feed your soul."
Yeah.
And
As the leader.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Because of course I'm all about building businesses that support your life in every facet of your life, spiritually, financially, emotionally, right? Mentally.
Yes.
So yeah, that was missing from at the time. And it was so funny that he could see it far more clearly than I could.
Well, and you're earlier you talked about healing being getting to the root cause.
Yeah.
Right. And that's one of the reasons that I love you, because I'm similar, right? Like, we got to get to the root cause, because I don't want to keep doing this over and over and over again. Right. Let's heal this, because Spirit has something more in store when we can move past this thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for people watching, the theme of this session is really about how do you embrace like how you really are in the way you run your business. And so I want to circle back to that canceled retreat, because that sounds awesome. So I think, that's about when we connected. So we had known each other through, events and speaking and all of that. But we connected when you said, you know what, I'm going to start doing these retreats again. Like, I've done them before. They're amazing. They get great results, but maybe they haven't been quite profitable. And Helen, what I remember is you were sitting down to create your content, and it just wasn't flowing. And it was feeling like it was a lot of work.
Yes.
And it felt like it. So this is super interesting, by the way, for people who lead retreats. You don't know what people are going to get. So like, you already knew how to lead retreats. You knew, you'd been doing it for years. You know how to work with people and get their healing. Sometimes it's like one aha that shifts everything. Yeah. So we have a thing called the Retreat Leader Archetype Quiz, and it's at retreatleaderquiz.com if anybody feels like taking it while you're watching this. And you were the sage.
Yes.
And I just remember like kind of watching the pieces click into place for you of like, wait, okay, so maybe this is why every time I sit down to write my content or make my workbook or whatever, it feels challenging. Can you share a little bit about, what you had learned to do and then what you do most naturally?
Yes. So I had learned of course, that you have to create the content and map out everything, and of course we end up fire hosing people because you have so much content that they would leave like totally overwhelmed. And it really didn't serve them the way it could, right? Because I think we live in an information age. So many of us are so overwhelmed with too much information as it is. And so for me, it really felt like, the way I would put it, it felt like pushing a really heavy donkey up a hill. A very stubborn donkey. It was hard. And one thing I know about my life, Darla, is that really first of all, when something is of source, it is simple.
Yes.
Simple is not the same as easy, but there is a flow and there is an ease to it. And so that has become a hallmark for me, right? And so I can't sit in something and struggle for too long. And I'm so grateful for that. Some people used to call me all kinds of things, and I got chastised for it when I was younger.
Wait, what kind of things?
Oh, things that I was called? Oh, fickle, unstable. You chop and change too much. And it's interesting, or just miserable. I was called, why are you so miserable? Because if something doesn't feel right for me, I'll be like, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
I can't stay here and sit here no matter how much you're telling me I should.
Wow.
But
And
I would resist it.
I bet for people listening, I bet there are people listening who've been called fickle.
Oh my gosh.
Right. And judged for that.
Yes.
And yet, that has been a gift for you as a leader, and especially the more you've embraced it.
Yes. So for many people, there's a model that's like, the rinse and repeat model, right?
Yes.
You figure out what it is you do, right?
I tried it so many times.
Me too. And I was like, and literally I did. I got to a place last year in my business where I was like, finally, I've figured out myself and my thing enough. And I know what my thing is, and this works. And now we can just rinse and repeat. No. I'm like, Spirit, seriously, could I not have the easy button? Like, really? But and the flip side of it is why so many of my clients stay with me for years, because it's never the same.
Right.
No two of my events have ever been the same.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean that the core of what I do changes. The core does not change.
Right.
Right. But I'm constantly evolving and growing and bringing that. So there's a freshness, there's another edge, there's always pushing the edge. And I've come to accept that's what keeps me alive and vibrant and joyful. And it's what as those who are old enough will understand. It's what flicks my bick.
I do remember those ads.
So yeah, but learning within your in your retreat that I attended when we were doing the archetype and the sage, it was a moment of deep acceptance. It was like getting permission to be myself. It felt like sheer relief. And it was like I'd been handing a permission slip, and I'd been handed my favorite tool, which is this easy button from Staples. And what I find is the more I let go, as I've learned to trust it more and give myself more and more permission, then it's gotten better and better and better, because I'm more and more and more aligned with who I am, and it is my most powerful place. And it is the place where I let go and I allow source to come through, which is where everybody is now served. It's like it amplified and quantified, everything, and took it to a whole nother level. Yay. Thank you, Darla.
Yes. Yes. Well, and I want to come back to what you said, and then I'm going to take us to kind of making offers in the same way, right? Because that's also interesting.
Yeah.
But you said, I've come to accept that it's like, I think you said, this is what keeps me alive. This is what keeps me on the edge. I think of that as the energy, right? And we have the call to lead retreats, or we get this vision for, maybe I could do this. And sometimes the vision comes in very dramatic ways, to get our attention, right? Like, I'm going to go to, I always say, I'm going to take people to Bali and do this and that. Well, maybe that is the vision, but maybe that just was getting your attention to say, how can I serve people in groups? But so the vision comes through, and then we put it on the books, and now it's the energy starts to create within that container, right? And then we get clearer and clearer and clearer what the retreat is actually about.
Yes.
And so just talk a little bit about embracing that process. And like, you said no two retreats are the same. My clients stay with me a long time. Like, I'm always fresh. Like, talk a little bit about how that works and why it works. Really, what are people looking for that freshness maybe is more attractive than rinsing and repeating?
Yeah, I think that what they're looking for is what I reflect back to them. Someone said to me the other day, they said, that people prefer who they are when they're in your presence, right? They think that what they like is you, But really what it is, it's the reflection. We're just reflecting each other, right? So what they like is the them that they're seeing in you, right? They just don't know, they wouldn't put it in those words, right? But how they feel, right? And so I think that their soul pulls them for those reasons. And the mind will tell you, well, no, it's because I'm stuck and I want to get unstuck, or I want to make more money in my business, or whatever it is that we come up with to get us in the room. And someone was asking me the other day, like, where are people at when they come to your intensive? And I was like, there's not one specific problem that we solve. And that was another thing I was trying to fit into, because, we're told solve one specific problem.
Yes.
And so these are places I kept running up from against myself. And maybe some of these people who are listening are running up against that themselves, right? We keep trying to fit into a box. And some of you are just not meant for a box. Yeah. And you have to have permission to create your own box, and know that the people who are drawn to you, whatever you call your box, no matter what color you paint it or how you decorate it, right? They'll be attracted because there's something deeper that they're needing from you.
Yes.
And that was another piece that really I am accepting that. My most successful retreat was the one I held last year. That was most successful on every level, most fun for me, for my most amazing transformations, and most highly profitable. So on all three areas. And it was because I literally have applied everything that I've learned and that you teach, right? About really listening and aligning with the soul of your retreat, and then allowing it to align with your soul, right? And what lights you up. And from that place we serve whoever is called. So I have no idea if I answered your question, but
there's such juicy nuggets in because the box, right? And we're told we need the box, and you need a box, right? You just need to pick a box, but don't obsess about the box.
Yes.
Like the exact words on the box, because people will feel the energy inside the box.
Yes.
Even if you put words that don't pertain, they'll find, if they need you, they'll find the words that pertain to them.
Yes.
Right. And it could be one line on the page.
Yes.
And they'll go, yes, that's the thing I need.
Yes.
So don't obsess about getting the box just right.
And that's why it comes back to even this piece about like aligning and being true to yourself, right? As a leader, because that's the energy that you're bringing. And so if we're not being true to ourselves, it's kind of like wearing a mask. And if you're wearing a mask, your people can't recognize you. Right? So it's like if your energy, if you're not full and clear and aligned and amplified, and you're not going to attract the same thing or with the same amount of ease.
And Meghan is a yogi and a retreat leader and a brilliant transformational coach, guru. I don't really love that word, but like really lover of all things transformation, studier of this work in all kinds of ways, both with your training, with your reading and studying, but live and on the front lines in front of the room, which is like the best education ever.
Yeah.
So Meghan works with women who want to connect with their intuition and learn to trust their bodies. And so fast forward, you started leading your retreats. Mm-hmm. And I want to kind of dive in, because we've had people this week talk about like filling the retreat and we'll kind of circle back to that, because I know you have had success filling your retreats from Facebook ads. So I know people would be really interested in that. But I want to talk about some of the things that happen on retreat that don't necessarily work. So do you want to start with the cookie story?
Yes, we'll start with the cookie story. So I feel very much that what we are working on in ourselves will show up at the retreat. Like, it will be delivered to you at the retreat, and it is your opportunity to rise to that occasion or potentially not. And so in some ways I did, and in some ways I definitely did not rise to that occasion. So I always find it funny, whatever I call the name of the retreat is exactly what's handed. And it's what the attendees are working on, but it's also what I'm working on as well. So this one was called the Find Your Inner Voice Retreat. That is a little lead into what exactly happened.
I love that. I had a client who said she did a summit called, it was something truth. I Speak Your Truth Summit or something like that. And she was like, she learned a lot of truth about herself during it. She's like, don't ever do that.
Yeah. Be careful what you name your retreat.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I had been working on, expressing my own inner voice, and then built this retreat around it. And so the first thing that happened was I had recently, gone separate ways from my best friend who also had worked with me. And so she was scheduled to be my assistant on this retreat. Even though we had, personally split ways, I still somehow thought it was all going to work out. Right. Which, a little naive.
Well, and so if we look at that, why do you think that was? Was it like, I don't want to rock the boat, or I just really need help? What do you think?
I think I really knew. I think I really knew that it was a bad idea. And I think that intuitively I was starting to get those hits even probably 2 weeks before the retreat, but I didn't speak up. Right. So I didn't find my inner voice and share what that experience was. So I very much believe that the divine, that spirit will create the energy that needs to be created. Right. So she came to the retreat, and within, I think, an hour or 2 hours of being there, got sick, went to the hospital, got sick, had to leave. And so I had no backup plan in that moment for what I would do to fill the void of not having someone assist me. But I had done retreats without assistance before.
Well, I was going to say that your first retreat, if we back up before we connected, you had done a retreat where you were the chef and the assistant and the leader and the yoga instructor and all of the things.
Everything.
Right?
Yeah.
So you knew it was important to have someone.
Right. Yes. Yep. And I also knew the show must go on at that point. Right. So I was in it. And so I had been very organized ahead of time. So I had a list of all the things that she was to do. So I just moved them to my list. Right. And so I very much believe that spirit, that was a part of spirit's plan, right? Was the energy, where it wasn't meant to work out that way. Had I spoke up sooner, that was lesson number one of this retreat. Had I spoke up sooner, I could have alleviated some of that, because it played into the whole weekend, right? So the cookie day was day 2. And because of not having, the reason I shared about not having an assistant was, I had to rely on this innkeeper who kind of was running the property that we were staying at. So I had to delegate a lot more to her and have her set rooms up for me and be a part of it, which in turn made the participants have probably a deeper connection with her than they would have had, because she was in and out and interacting with all of us and playing a bigger role. So it's about halfway through day 2. It's after lunch. And I do these art therapy projects, and it's one of the highlights of my retreats. And I just absolutely love doing them. The thing with the art is people finish at different times. So first off, we go into the room to do this art project, and one of the participants is oh, can the innkeeper come and do this? Like, we have an extra painting set up. Like, can she come and do this? And this was very much me in this moment, right? So in my head, I knew that it was a no, right? I knew that it was a no, yet I didn't want to seem like the bad guy. Like, I didn't want to be like, yeah, no, she can't, when clearly there was enough set up for her. Like, why, right? But when you're hosting a retreat, there's a certain energy of everyone working together. And so to throw another person in that hasn't been a part of any of the other experiences can change things, right? So I knew what to do, and I did not do it. Right. So I was trying to be the nice guy and trying to please everyone and not look a certain way. And so I was like, yeah, no problem. Come on in. Right. So this is now the second time where I have not found my own inner voice at the Find Your Inner Voice. So we get doing the art project, and it's beautiful, a beautiful experience. It was scheduled to be about an hour and a half long, and some people just finish painting a little bit sooner. And so my intention was, this is how the schedule was supposed to go. We were supposed to spend an hour and a half on this art project. Then we had a half an hour, which was going to be like a break in the other room where cookies and brownies and coffee, everything was going to be served. So that way I could clean up the art supplies in that half an hour and then bring them back for one more exercise before we broke for the evening, right? And this last exercise was to be where my offer was going to be made. So I felt very strongly that I wanted the offer to be made that afternoon of day 2, because in the evening we had a concert, like a sound healing concert. And so I knew that was not the place to do it either. So we're doing the art project. Some people finish, some people are helping each other. And then I didn't see her slip out, but somebody asked the innkeeper for a cup of coffee. So the energy was very different, because had it just been us in the room, probably no one would have asked for that, right? Like,
that's where the boundaries sneak in, right? And having clear roles and clear expectations.
Yes. So someone asked her for a cup of coffee, and she's like, immediately, that's her job, right? She jumps in and is like, stops her painting, goes down and comes back up with not the cup of coffee. She comes up with the cup of coffee, but she comes up with this platter of all the brownies, the cookies. And as she walks in, I can remember saying like, oh, those are for at 3:30, right? Like I can remember saying that, but then I'm faced once again with, they've now all seen this, right? And do I take the cookies away from them? Like in my head, right? That's what's happening. I probably could have navigated that. And that's what I should have done. However, in my head, what's happening is they've all seen the cookies, and it's in my head, it's like we're dealing with toddlers or something. Like they've seen the cookies and I can't take them away now. And so she brings them up and puts them on the table, and then everyone starts to, grab a cup of coffee, grab a brownie. And so what's happened is certain people are totally done with the art. Some people are finishing up, to the point I start seeing people putting coats on, because they know after that next spot was this break before dinner, right? And so I am like starting to really freak out, because I know that this is my window to make the offer. And it was really important to me to make it on day 2 versus day 3. And so I am like, I tell them I have to leave the room for a moment to grab everything I need to make this offer. And that I want to tell them about the upcoming, what's next. The third piece to this is I did not tell them there would be an offer. So I've since then learned to start planting the seed on day one about, I'm going to give everything I can this weekend. And for some of you, you'll want to continue this work, and I'll tell you how that's possible. Right. And so I didn't do that. So they're just thinking like, we're done. Right. And now I'm about to make the biggest offer I've ever made. So I'm already have anxiety around that, and I'm not in the right energy, right? Like I knew when I went into my room to get the folders that I was giving out with the information on the offer, that I wasn't in the right mindset to make this offer, right? And so I come back in, I had planned on the story I was going to share, everything, the exercise I was going to lead up to this offer. And I didn't do any of it. I just literally told them, like, here's your offer, even though I hadn't planted any seeds. And so everyone just stopped. Like, the energy in the room was just gone, like completely sucked out of the room. Some people who already had their coats on, like, got up and left, like, and then the few people that kind of lingered around, not one question about the offer. And I was so excited about the offer. It was the offer I was more excited about than any I've ever offered. But it wasn't, it was all of those things. And so everyone left the room, and then I'm left alone with my own insecurities, cleaning up the paint, like just cleaning up the paint. Yeah.
And you wouldn't see them again until the concert.
And the concert was open to the public as well. So there was like going to be other people there. Yeah. So our next point of contact was alone as a group was the following morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So interesting. I tried to be nice. I didn't speak up. I didn't find my inner voice, even though you were getting these signals of like, no, like, no, that's my boundary. That's my boundary. I don't want to like look like the bad guy. Yep. So, you said it, your lessons get served up on a platter, literally. Mm-hmm. So what did you learn from that?
Oh, yeah. I learned, number one, to follow my intuition. So, how powerful would it have been had I set the boundaries? Because every single retreat, even though I ran multiple retreats of the Find Your Inner Voice retreat, has a certain theme or energy to it just based on the people coming. And if you want to know what this one was, this one was all about boundaries. Everyone who showed up, that was what the coaching was around, was boundaries. So had I stepped up, used my own voice to create those boundaries, I would have been the example for them. Right? Like, how much more powerful would that have been? I had the opportunity to do that, and I didn't. And so when I look at it from the point of, I could have seemed rude by saying, no, she can't be in the group with us. And no, we can't have the brownies yet. Right? Like, I could have seemed or been perceived whatever way. However, I was teaching and coaching around boundaries with everyone. So, and then for me not to live in that was really a powerful lesson.
Yeah. Yeah, because even if people aren't putting the pieces together consciously, right? Nobody's thinking about that.
Totally.
But had they seen it and felt it, because whatever your fear was of they're going to think I'm mean or, whatever, they have that same fear in their life. So if they see you model like, oh, you know what? She set a boundary and she didn't die. Maybe I could do that too. And maybe she could actually teach me how to do that.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I believe that I ended up, of the 12 women there, one person took the offer, and it was a modified version of the offer. So it wasn't even the original offer that I had made. Yeah. And had I stepped into that moment, I 100% believe that the outcome would have been different.
Yeah. And starting with the assistant, really.
Yeah. Oh,
Not been
absolutely.
there, the innkeeper, you know, if you had a different assistant or whatever.
Mhm. Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
beautiful. And so for people listening, you can always save an offer, but it's kind of interesting. It's kind of vulnerable. Like the only thing I can imagine that would have been able to, because you could have come back and like re-offered and told the story in the morning and kind of set the stage in that way. But they still have that little energy exchange, right? Planted, right? Where you weren't being the offer.
Yeah.
So the only way around that would be to actually say, so this is the Find Your Inner Voice retreat. And here's what I noticed yesterday, right? And to actually share about that I didn't set that boundary because I didn't know what you would think of me. And I'm telling you now that that doesn't work, right? And to kind of come clean about it.
Yeah.
And again, we don't know how that would go, but it's like, you really do. This is the reason I'm sharing this, Meg, is because these are the intricacies of being a retreat leader. Is you not only need to know your content, what's going on with your people, you need to be able to put the pieces together to see the theme and to look at your own energy.
Yeah.
And be able to own the truth. Because if you can own the truth, then you can help them own the truth, which is ultimately what they're coming for, right? Yeah. Like, I have some blind spot. I'm not getting the result I want. Someone please help me see what I can't see about this. Yeah. So if you're seeing, you know, your own blind spots and modeling that, they can get that. But it takes a real fierceness and a lot of courage in that moment, right? If it's delivered up on the silver platter, to like shift the pattern in that moment takes something.
Yeah.
And that would be the question to ask is, how do I shift this pattern of find my inner voice, right? How do I really shift this? And it could be being really vulnerable and transparent. It could be actually just deciding to like piss them off somehow, right? Because that was kind of what you were trying to avoid, is that they would think you were bad or right. Yeah. So it's like, oh, how do I be bad or mean today, right? So I can get over this, whether they take the offer or not. So I can shift the energy within me,
right?
So you got that, and you've gone on to kind of integrate that speaking up in your life in all kinds of areas.
Yeah.
And you've had several retreats since. So I guess what feels best for you to share. You could kind of share a little bit about how actually speaking up has been manifesting in your life, or you could share a little bit of where else have you gotten those lessons on a silver platter in your retreats?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll try and kind of answer both of them. I found that when I started speaking up in my business life and at retreats and building that muscle, I was then able to use that in my personal life. And so for me, and I know some people it's the opposite way, for me, it came easier in business to start, right? And so the more I practice that, and I feel very much, and I know you teach so much about this, that being an entrepreneur, like, it's the lines are so meshed together, right? That energy of that. So it was like once I was stepping into speaking up and really using my voice and continuing to use them at the retreats after that, I then was able to use it with my relationship with my husband. So we created a new energy between us by me speaking up. And so by me speaking up, I caused quite a few waves, right? Because I was now acting in a way that was unfamiliar to him.
Yes.
Right? And so it was an experience of having to relearn what we wanted our roles to be, right? And redefine what those roles looked like and the energy of our marriage. And to be completely honest, like things got worse before they got better, as far as everything getting kind of stirred up. But I knew there was something in me that knows, once I embody that new energy, I can't go back. Yeah. So it's like, yes, I could go back, right? But when I know better, I do better, right? And so I understood what was happening. And for me, it just clicked more easily. And I understood it better in my professional life, and then started incorporating it into my personal life, and really also started creating boundaries with family members as well. And so, and was able to handle the kickback and the, you know, she's so rigid, or why can't you just do it this way, right? I started to understand that that was not about me, right? That was about them or their interpretation of it. And so I started to hold that space a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to be a really confident retreat leader, because, you know, most of us, anyone who's watching this is probably playing it out in their business first, and then it translates to your life, right? There's a lot of nuances to understand and a lot of personal responsibility. Because like, yeah, we could easily say, well, no, you know, whatever it is, the innkeeper's fault, or right. But it's like, no, taking that personal responsibility and understanding how energy works. So you're really holding the most clean energy possible for your clients. And a lot of people aren't willing, I've found, because I've worked with a lot of retreat leaders and a lot of people who have been called to lead retreats, but they don't want to clean up their life in order to do the work.
Right.
It takes a big commitment.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like signing up for this career, like to be a retreat leader, like you are committing to a life of growth. Like if you really want to be the best retreat leader and hold that space and continue to grow for your people, right? Like you have to do the work yourself, like very 100%. Much. Yeah. Yeah.
Over and over, right?
Over and over. And it's new lessons and new things you didn't see coming. And
people won't pay for transformation, they told me when I started my business. Thankfully, I didn't listen, or at least I didn't listen for very long. This is Darla, and I have been offering transformational retreats as a part of my business model for years. I've earned millions of dollars through hosting retreats. And here's what I want you to know. It just may be that overtly adding the transformational component of your work into the way you offer your services is the most powerful and profitable choice you can make right now. I'm talking about not sneaking transformation in the back door, but actually designing your business around this work you hold so dear. If you're intrigued, I invite you to check out our brand new live retreat experience just for leaders like you over at retreatandgrowrich.com/retreat. Extraordinary retreats require exceptional leaders, and we can't keep sneaking our magic in the back door a minute longer. The world needs your genius. retreatandgrowrich.com/retreat. Head on over there today.